Hi, everyone, and a very pleasant evening to you, no matter where you might be. Tonight we're going to show you some magnificent film of salmon fishing for large salmon within 12 miles of downtown Vancouver, Canada's third largest city. By the way, once again, my name is Ted Peck, or Uncle Stumbly, if you will, and a very pleasant welcome to Tides and Trails.
Tides and Trails is presented each week at this time by Sportsman Cigarettes. Sportsman, with the tobacco that's too good to filter. Now, here's Ted Peck.
Thank you, and before we start the film tonight and show you all the salmon fishing and so on, I would like to draw on the blackboard here a description of Horseshoe Bay, where all this action takes place, and show you how close to the center of downtown Vancouver it is, and show you the size of Horseshoe Bay. Let us presume that this is Vancouver Point Grey out here. For those of you who have never visited the Pacific Coast, then we have False Creek, English Bay, and so on, Stanley Park like this. And we cross over, we have the Lionsgate Bridge somewhere in here, and we go out along here, and there's a lot of little coves and bays and so on. And then we have Horseshoe Bay sitting over here roughly about like that. And it's not very big. It's only 1,100 feet across and about 2,000 feet long. There's a couple of little islands out here off it. And then this shoreline goes all up, House Sound up in through here. And we have Boyer Island, which sits in right about here. And all the salmon fishing that we were doing in one day, or actually 2 days, was done right in this area, right in Horseshoe Bay. Now, the reason for this show tonight is the fact that Horseshoe Bay is a multiple-use area. It was long ago, from 30, 40 years ago, it has been a fishing resort all this time. But as of lately, the government of British Columbia Ferry Service has 2 slips in there that 2 large ferries come in. As a matter of fact, there's about 6 or 8 ferries that use it. And there's becoming an ever-increasing problem of boats versus ferries. Now, other than the ferry slips in Horseshoe Bay, mind you, part of the Trans-Canada Highway fits right into Horseshoe Bay and goes right in there. Right in the center of the bay, Carl Osterman has a wharf where he rents boats. And on the corner of the bay over here on this side, Tommy Sewell has a very large marina and boat rental establishment. He's been there for many, many years. And on a good Sunday in Horseshoe Bay, almost any month of the year, you will see as many as 1,000 boats of all sizes and descriptions fishing for salmon up to 30 pounds, sometimes even 40 pounds, all in the area of Horseshoe Bay itself. Now, Horseshoe Bay being a northerly exposed bay, that north would be about there, is a very good fish-producing area. And the government of Canada has seen fit, over 20 years ago, to set aside all this area between Boyer Island and Horseshoe Bay, all this area in here, for sport fishing only. There is no commercial fishing allowed in this area. And what the big problem seems to be now is that there's so many cars backed up to use the government ferry service and so on, and there's so many boats fishing in the bay that there's going to be an accident pretty soon. And the government is considering, the provincial government that is considering putting another ferry slip in here. And we're just going to put on this show to show the case for the fishermen. And we're going to show you over 14 different salmon of various sizes being caught in the area, remember, no farther out than that, all right in the main portion of Horseshoe Bay. So without any further noise and description from me, let's go out to Horseshoe Bay and go salmon fishing. This is my good friend Jeff Hazard, who lives right in Horseshoe Bay and has a little boat there of his own, Christina, and myself going fishing out of Horseshoe Bay on Tommy Sewell's wharf. We're looking towards Carl Osterman's wharf and also the government ferry service there. That's one of the big ferries. There's some of the rental fleet of boats operated by Tom Sewell. And we're borrowing one of his boats for this occasion, but sometimes we use Carl's boats, and we don't favor anyone in the bay because, after all, we get along with everyone. There's Jeff Hazard picking out some choice herring for use, live herring, and the two ferries are crossing in the meantime. And we're going to mooch once again for the spring salmon. Remember that this is the fish that you can catch 12 months of the year right in Horseshoe Bay, here where these films were taken. And the traffic problem, particularly on a Sunday, is getting to be something astronomical. And there's as many as 1,000 boats, as I say, out on a good Sunday, anytime from April right through to October. And the die-hard winter fishermen are fishing all winter long. And even on a good Sunday, for instance, in January, you will see 200 boats in Horseshoe Bay fishing. The temperature was pretty warm this day. I would say around 60 degrees out of Horseshoe Bay, but the Nanaimo ferries, there's one of them, the Big Queen of Chawasan. They're pretty big and pretty fast, and a little boat, particularly some of you people who come from the prairie provinces who come out to Horseshoe Bay for the first time to fish, you are not going to know quite what to do, particularly if you get a 20-pounder like Ray has on here on his line, and something like this looms into view. It's going to be quite a problem. Now, the skippers and officers and men of the ferry service are very, very careful, and they slow down coming into Nanaimo Harbor and Horseshoe Bay Harbor here as well. But we're trying to explain that another ferry slip, although we all need the service, Uncle Stumbly included, I use the BC ferries as much as anyone. Let's try and see if we can take a better look at it and find another location to put the additional service required. There's Ray's 20-pound spring salmon, a beautiful fish. Both red and white springs were caught in the bay this day. Using the live herring, once again, you keep them fresh by changing the water quite often. Herring anywhere from 4 inches to 9 inches. Now there's Uncle Stumbly with a shark, a little dogfish as we call them locally. We caught 14 dogfish before we finally hooked the salmon ourselves. Another one of the big ferries in the background there. They're quite awe-inspiring and quite fearsome to all of you when you're sitting in a little 10 or 12-foot boat. This fellow is Jack Thomas, one of our able studio crew who works with us at CHAN TV, out trying mooching for the first time. Sportsman tobacco, of course. And the day got so warm that we finally took off our outer Cowichan sweater, a wonderful type sweater to have all throughout most of the year on the British Columbia coast. Offering Jeff, our host, a Sportsman cigarette. And the water was just as you see it here most of the day. The fishing was done between 6 and 9 in the morning, and almost any day of the year, Horseshoe, there's an example of the numbers of boats. Almost any day of the year, Horseshoe Bay will be just this flat because it faces north, and the only wind that can come at it is down the Howe Sound Inlet, and this is what they call locally a Squamish wind. And any other prevailing wind, such as the typical westerly or southeasterly, will not affect the weather in Horseshoe Bay. And there's a little gray cod that Ray McCormick has caught. A very good eating fish, but hardly what you'd call a sporting fighter. There's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police launch Little Bow, the MP-95, which was called in on this day because of the traffic problem, and is asking very politely and respectfully the boat to clear a channel for the Langdale Queen to exit from Horseshoe Bay. The Mounted Police are very well respected on the water, and the fishermen cooperated 100%. Jeff and I still mooching away there without a bite. They're the RCMP corporal there and the crew of the Little Bow. Fine group of helpers, and believe me, they keep law and order on the BC coast very, very well. Now here's Ray McCormick with another salmon. This fellow is the most fantastic salmon fisherman on the BC coast. And there is Vic Fox, another old friend of ours, with his dog, Sparky, out mooching. Here comes one of Ray's salmon in again. The spring salmon is a deeper fighter than the coho salmon, which puts up your better scrap but for a shorter duration. The spring will fight you for as much as 1 hour at a time on this light tackle. We're using 6-pound test leaders and 8 to 14-pound test lines. And they usually fight between 20 minutes and an hour and a quarter, depending on the size of the salmon. And they will put up a tremendous jumping display as well as deep running, and they'll take out hundreds and hundreds of yards of line. And here again is a problem. You might hook a salmon, for instance, where this lad is here, or this is, I guess this is Uncle Stumbly and Jeff, with the ferry in the background. You might hook a salmon here, but by the time that you're landing it, you might be right in the path of the ferry because they can tow these small boats very, very efficiently. There's Sparky having another look. Beautiful spring salmon. I must explain that these pictures were taken in 2 days. Bill Dennett went out again on the Sunday because otherwise we'd have poor old Ray McCormick here pinched because your limit on spring salmon is 4 per day, and we actually show Ray catching at least 6. Here comes the Bowen Queen again, back from Bowen Island. And we're certainly not in any way detrimentally speaking of the British Columbia government, the ferry department at all, because we all need these ferries to get from one island to the other, and there are various summer resorts. But the main thing is, let's all have a better look at another location for the additional ferry service. And this senior citizen here has hooked himself a giant skate, which took him about 2 hours to bring in, and evidently he lost it just as he was coming into the boat. So he's a real sportsman there. Uncle Stumbly just hooked onto a salmon finally. Not a very big one, I might add, but anything over 3 pounds is considered to be a salmon. The arbitrary difference, as we told you a couple of weeks ago, between salmon and grilse or bluebacks is the 3-pound mark. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly you people from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, that there is no fishing license as yet required to fish in salt water, and you can come to Horseshoe Bay here in the summertime if you have holidays, or you're even in the wintertime, 12 months of the year, and stand a good chance of catching these spring salmon, just like this. As I say, this is just a little fellow, but it was a very delicious one, a red spring, and we had a wonderful dinner from him. Unhooking him and dispatching him promptly with the priest. Jeff and I were pretty proud of this one. We fished for 14 dogfish, as I say, before we finally hooked Mr. Spring Salmon. But that's nothing. We've got to laugh on Uncle Willie. Wild Bill Dennett went out again this Sunday and fished all day, and all he got was dogfish. There's Jack Thomas, and he hooked a few dogfish, too. A whole family is going out. It's quite a resort area for families. I say it's so close to the center of downtown Vancouver. Another ferry on its way in. Here's some of Ray McCormick's fish. Cleaning them. I'd like to point out to the people on the, or in the Prairie provinces, once again I've received several letters about throwing the remains in the water. In the sea, it's quite legal, and there's a lot of scavengers such as crab, octopus, and various other types of scavenging fish or dogfish and so on that'll clean it up. It's not like throwing entrails into fresh water. 2 20-pounders, just like twins. And here's another young lad that has had a successful morning's fishing with about a 12 or 14-pound salmon. And this is just a small example of what you're going to see. We are going to show you many more salmon being caught. We'll try to give you some more of the hints on how to do it yourselves when you come to Horseshoe Bay. But now,
it's Tides and Trails Tall-Tailed Trophy time.
If you'll just excuse me for a moment, having a sportsman, I have a wonderful tall tale here, which was sent into one television station in Saskatoon, CSQC, where our show is carried. And how are you all in CSQC land? But actually, the gentleman was in Saskatoon at the time on a trip, and he lives in Calgary, and his name is Frank Farrell. So we're going to send your beautiful 20-pound spring salmon, like you see us catching here, Frank, to the Calgary television station, CFCN, and your carton of Sportsman cigarettes and your scroll will be in Calgary. However, we'd like to congratulate CFQC for receiving this particular tall tale, and we think it's very, very funny. Let's see what you think here. It's a rather French-Canadian one, so without any detrimental effect on the French-Canadians, I hope that you don't mind me using a little bit of an accent. I would like to submit the following tall tale, says Frank Farrell. He says, it's a scrubbed-up version of a story told to me by a French-Canadian, and I trust it will be applicable on your context. Now here it is, and here starts the French-Canadian accent. A moose hunting party was made the reservations with a lodge. On arrival, they acquire from the owner about a guide. They were told that they could have Andre or Jacques, both the finest guides in the country, and they cost $10 per person per day. But you also could have maybe my son Pierre, who is $20. And Andre and Jacques is each a crack shot with a rifle, with a smoke pole. But the reason they want to know why Pierre is $20 and these other two are only 10. This is the reason why. Now my Pierre, he is beautiful with the moose call. When he makes the moose call with the moose call, the moose, they fall in love with him. They swim the lake. He gallops across the open. He trashes through the bush. And maybe your party are not good shots. So, maybe they are, maybe they're not. But you see, that way you have to have my son Pierre, but you have to have Andre or Jacques with them. Because with my son Pierre, there must be either Andre or Jacques, because they are both the crack shots. And my son Pierre, he is good with the moose call. But you must remember that to kill that moose, if you hunters miss, because I don't want no nearsighted, lovesick moose to get my son Pierre. Well, anyway, that's the story, and I think it's very, very good. So congratulations to you. So to you, Frank Farrell of Calgary, 1402 7A Street Northwest in Calgary, Alberta. Congratulations, your scroll, your salmon, and so on, and your fortune cigarettes are coming out to CFCN, but we'd like to congratulate CF2C in Saskatoon for this tall tale. And the one little other thing he says on his letter, we'd like to see fly fishing for steelhead. We have this planned, Mr. Farrell, in the very, very near future. Now let's go back to Horseshoe Bay and more salmon fishing. Here's one of the lads that works with Tommy Sewell, jigging his own herring right on the float there. That was so thick you could walk on it. And incidentally, fresh herring is very, very good eating. Now, a lot of the people come all the way out from the city quite often to jig the herring and eating, and Tommy discourages it on his float, and so does Carl Osterman, because of the danger to the public going up and down the floats. But there is the government float right in between the two private rental floats that you're allowed to jig from. Horseshoe Bay has sheer walls and is very, very deep. There are portions and sections of Horseshoe Bay that are well over 300 feet deep. There's Vic and his dog Sparky again, watching Ray land another salmon. But the main point, again, to get back to it, is that Horseshoe Bay is only 1,100 feet across and only 2,000 feet long. It has been reserved by the Government of Canada for a sport fishing area for many years. We all need the ferries, but let's take a better look at another location to put that extra slip. A beautiful salmon here, and everyone has an equal opportunity to catch fish of this size and much larger 12 months of the year. You can bring your own boat to Horseshoe Bay. There's a launching ramp operated by the City of West Vancouver, the Parks Board, and you can launch your own boats as well as rent from either Tommy or Carl. And as I say, sometimes on a good Sunday, there are just 1,000 boats anyway. The Fisheries Department as far back, there's Ray McCormick, good look at it. Fisheries Department as far back as 1958 made a survey, and from the point, just about where these pictures were taken of the ferry, they counted over 2,000 passings of boats. And this was not a Sunday when there was a big derby on. Every year there's a large derby operated by Vancouver's newspaper, The Sun. And there, of course, there's extra boats on this day. But just on a normal Sunday, there were 2,000 passings. I'd like to compliment and commend Tommy Sewell on his attitude toward the blind people as well. He gives them free boats anytime the members of the CNIB, Canadian National Institute for the Blind Fishing Club, want to come down and fish. And Joe Lewis, their leader, their sporting director, is always fishing there. He's an excellent sportsman and fisherman in his own right. And Tommy supplies absolutely free herring and boats for the blind people. I'd like to give him a special pat on the back for that. Oh, Vic is a little bit jealous here. Vic Fox is a very good fisherman and great sportsman in his own right, and he didn't get a fish this day. But how'd you like to be playing a 20-pounder like that with one of those great, huge ferries? But of course, Vancouver Island, we all like to go over to Vancouver Island, and we need the service. And as I say, both Bill Dennett and myself are constantly using the British Columbia ferry system. But when it's getting to be a problem of fish and ferries, we're going to say fish and ferries, not fish versus ferries. Let's let the government engineers and everyone take a real good, close look before they put in any more additional traffic and tie-up producing elements. A lovely salmon here. About 16 or 18 pounds. You're going to see a picture now, in the near future, or maybe a few seconds from now, a young lad, Michael Catchpole, catching one of his first large salmon, and his dad was right with him. It was just a wonderful experience to be beside them and see this happen. In this case, it was Ray McCormick who caught the fish, and he had a double header. He had hooked one on each rod, and he passed one rod over to his friend, who then is handing him back his salmon. Ray lost the one he was playing. So even the great Ray McCormick loses the odd one. But he is quite a sportsman, and from what I understand, he donates many of his salmon to charitable causes, which is a real sporting attitude. Another nice one, and this is one of Carl Osterman's boats, the Bay boat rentals in the center of the bay. Beautiful calm weather. And there again you see the RCMP boat Little Bow. There's British Columbia's own railroad, the Pacific Great Eastern, which is a wonderful trip if you're coming out to British Columbia to follow the scenic route up Howe Sound and through the Pemberton Valley. It's a beautiful trip at any time of the year, particularly in the summer. Now here's the young lad with the big Queen of Langdale bearing down on him. He's about 12 years old, 11 years old, Michael Catchpole. His father has been fishing for many years, and he's teaching his son the true sporting method. And here he's making a few remarks with the Queen of Langdale Queen here on fishing, and these films prove it. I mean, there are times when the herring move out of the bay that the salmon are not in there as thick, but there's an existing prawn and shrimp bed in Horseshoe Bay that was used to be commercially fished many years ago, but now this is not allowed, so that there's always something for the salmon to eat, either herring or shrimp, 12 months of the year. Most of these spring salmon are young fish, and they will not spawn for another 2 years, so they're always in beautiful, bright condition. There's George Davis. If you remember him, we were fishing with him at Stewart Lake. He came down for the Sportsman Show. Jack Thomas again, smoking a Sportsman. And George Davis, if you remember, was where we caught the big trout, 30-pounders, and threw them back in the lake. To the Great Eastern again. There's a whole family out for a day's outing. Horseshoe Bay on a sunny Sunday, the traffic is backed up for miles just to get out fishing, get out on the water. Ray McCormick was another scrappy little fellow, about the same size as the one I caught. Go around 3.5 to 4 pounds. One of the finest eating size salmon there is. So that's why we had to tell you that we took the films in 2 days, because of Ray's very exceptional catch. A lovely salmon, just right for the table. Catch them, have them that same day fresh. Beautiful scenery. They didn't get any in that boat. The mountains rise over 4,000 feet, straight up from the sea. And all this is Ray's limit for the day for fish. And we close with a shot taken by Bill Dennett of the Queen of Sydney departing for Nanaimo, and the Bowen Queen waiting to come in. There's sometimes so many ferries coming and going at the same time that one of them has to stand off while the other one comes in. So for the people of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, I know that we're sort of sticking pretty close to Vancouver for the last 2 or 3 shows. We will be coming to your area in the very, very near future. But while this sort of controversy is existing on fish and ferries. Now, I'm not going to say fish versus ferries. I say that once again, because we've got to have both. we thought we would show you this particular show on the salmon. Now, we're planning many, many shows in the near future in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and even Western Ontario. We're going to Manaki, which is not very far from Winnipeg, very, very soon now. And we're going to show you bass fishing, muskellunge, pike once again. And we're going to try to catch a black bass on a fly rod. And again, to you, Mr. Farrow, the winner of tonight's Tall Tales, we're going to try for steelhead in the Dean River and other coastal streams with a fly. Some are on steelhead. But these shows are not going to be that easy to get. The steelhead on the fly is a pretty rough customer and one of the rarest occurrences, and you have to be pretty good. We'll probably take Sure Catch along with us to make sure we get some steelhead on that particular trip. Well, there's the story. I want everyone in British Columbia to pay close attention to the fact that Horseshoe Bay is so close to Vancouver, and let's keep it as a good fishing area. We want the ferries too, so let's think about, particularly you technical people or you engineers and so on, let's think of another location where we can use the extra slip and keep Horseshoe Bay as the wonderful tourist and fishing resort that it has been for the 30 years of my memory. I was raised within 200 yards of it, and I'd like to see it stay that same way. So that's about it for this edition of Tides and Trails. Thanks for being with us. And don't forget our sportsman's creed. Be a true sportsman. Conserve our fish and our game and our wildlife. And, of course, smoke sportsman cigarettes as well. And once again, Ted Peck wishing you all the best. And tight lines, straight shooting.
Sportsman Cigarettes, with the tobacco that's too good to filter, has brought you Tides and Trails. Join Ted Peck next week at the same time. Tides and Trails was produced for Sportsman Cigarettes by CHAN-TV, Vancouver.